This one comes from Pam. Why vote to rescind the rights of a group of Iowans from the Iowa Civil Rights Law?
Yeah, I can start with that one here. This has been something that has been a topic of conversation for a few years. When I say a few years, I can recall as far as back as 2019. I got a call one Saturday morning, it might have been right after one of our forums here. I remember being at Buc-ee's off near Madison Avenue, and we got a phone call on Saturday morning, mid-morning, and there were multiple inmates with the Department of Corrections who had filed suit against the Department of Corrections wanting through a Medicaid provision as well as civil rights. Here we go. But they wanted sex changes. And we started talking about legislation at that point in time. I think it was like a half dozen at that point in time back then, right? But one of the provisions that they filed under as to why they felt they would why they felt they were kind of by law was the Iowa Civil Rights Code. And from then on, we tried to do multiple pieces of legislation. And I'm not, here to relitigate the bathroom bills or sports bills or anything along those lines. But I would say over the course of the last few years, we have started to see an uptick of plaintiffs out there filing suit, and one of the provisions they would file on as to why they would try to challenge a law, right? So back in, I think, 2019 or 2020, we had passed legislation and appropriation bill trying to block those from the Department of Corrections to prohibit them from having taxpayer-funded sex changes. And so then, like all the other things we just mentioned here, we started talking about, there was very right attorneys out there that would, again, try to challenge the laws that had been passed. And one of the things that they would cite was the Iowa Civil Rights Statute. That's the legal foundation for what led up there. This has been something that has been building for the last few years. We've tried to pass law changes to address and probably, for lack of a better term, solidify laws that we have passed. But they're reached a conversation point this year based upon this legislation passed the last 2 years as to what the likelihood of being upheld in the Iowa court system so long as transgender was cited in the Iowa Civil Rights Statute. What I found was interesting, well, I'll back up here real quick. I'm not going to minimize the fact that Iowa was the first state to repeal it. Okay? That's not a small thing. At the same time, too, let's also understand, 3 miles that way, Nebraska does not have transgender in their civil rights statute. And I don't see, based upon some of the critique I've heard, if you go around Dundee or the Old Market or Blackstone District or anywhere else, a lack of diversity, equity, or inclusion, or transgender Nebraskans at a lower legal status than over here in Iowa. I mean, that's the reality, folks.
Why do they?
Why don't they? There are 28 other states that do not have this in their statutes, particularly right across the river.
So?
You don't want to die on this hill?
Have you talked to a trans person?
You ready to die on this
Yeah,
hill?
they actually have. And so here's what I was going to say on this, is that a lot of trans Iowans just want to be left alone. Absolutely.
Then leave them alone.
Right.
But your
Give them
problem,
those
sir,
freedoms.
is that you have trans lawyer activists out there that are actually challenging it under the Iowa Civil Rights Statute.
Good.
Well,
That's
I would just say
Because
that
I
these are
printed
all
off
60 and
I printed off
70%
these links
issues.
just for you And in fact, several of them say that all of these handicapped groups are actually the ones that are directly combating you and trying to protect trans people. In fact, the people that they state that you claim are the ones to benefit from you stripping them of these legal rights. And I'm sorry, I don't even know.
What do you know for your country, son?
But
I don't think I said anyone benefits from this. I just said that we're trying to secure the laws that we have already passed here in the state, which is no taxpayer funding of sex changes, no boys and girls bathrooms, and no boys and girls sports.
Then why deny the amendments that protected them from keeping their housing or keeping?
Yeah, that's a good point. So,
Yeah.
That's a great point. So, when you talk about housing, you're talking about Potawatomi County corrections, you're talking about shelters, you're talking about nonprofit areas, where a lot of these are, they're set up for male or female. And you can't turn around and take the Iowa Civil Rights statute and say this class is protected, or has these additional protections, I should say, and then create a two-tier Iowa Civil Rights statute. I understand people are going to be where they're at on it. I come from a side where I think we have a legal basis for why we did what we did, and other people just think it should be a civil rights code. And that's totally understandable. But both sides can have their opinions on this. And I'm just trying to explain the legal reasons as to why we did. You might still disagree with it at the end, but it wasn't like what I heard some unfortunate rhetoric that just trying to target and, I wrote the Senate floor up there. We're trying to eradicate trans people from Iowa, which was the most reprehensible language I think I heard in the entire debate.
would you like a list of Republicans who directly said that, sir?
Well,
I know that Rick Scott can be quoted numerous times.
I don't think Rick Scott is in the Iowa legislature.
No, but he's in
I think-
Florida and unfortunately in Congress.
Anyways,
You don't live in Nebraska
I
either.
think we're going to stop this right here. We had a nice good 2 minute back and forth. That is the legal reason why. Some people still will not agree, but at the same point in time as well, too, that is the reason for those supporters, including myself, as to why legally, the 5-year legal history leading up to what would happen there. So, thank you.
If you passed laws that violated other civil
What
rights
entitles you?
groups, would your answer to that be, if you passed laws that violated other civil
What
rights
entitles you?
groups, would your answer to that be to strip their civil rights and not repeal those laws?
Let's
Why can't I just give rights to somebody?
let's keep some of the.
We have.
Guys, let's try
Rising
to keep
tide
the
lifts all
side
ships.
conversations to a minimum, please.
Oh, no, I did not vote for this. I spoke out on
Stand
Actually, for the first time in 3 years being in the Iowa House, it's called point of order on this. I read a poem, I can read it here, if I can't get point of order, which was, it's at the Holocaust Museum, it says, first they came for the socialists, I wasn't a socialist, so I said nothing. Then they came for the trade unionists, wasn't a trade unionist, so I said nothing. Then they came for the Jews, it was not a Jew. And ultimately, when there was no one left, they came for me, but there was no one left to fight for me. I said that because it's not only this issue, but in Iowa, unfortunately, we've also joined on to the 504 lawsuit, which would pull away all of the civil rights legislation for disabled folks. So what I said on the floor is, so first now you come for disabled civil rights, and now you're trying to go for the gender identity. Unfortunately, with this, Iowa, now we have the distinction of being the first state to remove a protected class from the Civil Rights Code. I think that's sad. I think that as we, a lot of us Democrats that on the floor, our state motto is, our liberties we prize, and our rights we will maintain.
For all.
For all. And I agree. And you bring up the bathroom situation, you bring up the sports situation, we've already litigated all of that. What this was is a civil rights code that made sure that there is no discrimination policies for housing, for health care, and for credit. I think that we all can recognize as Americans, it doesn't matter who we are, what the situation is. Every single one of us deserves that. So, another thing was said on the floor, at least on my side, I didn't hear the Senate debate, but they talked a lot about, this is for girls, this is for kids. And I just find that so disingenuous. I mean, here's a party that last year, we voted to make 12-year-old, carry rape victims. We took away their reproductive rights. The number one killer of kids in this state is cancer. Yet we put $0 of state appropriation toward that. The number two is firearm related. We put nothing to it. So I find that argument is a little bit disingenuous. Like I said, I think it's sad that Iowa would become the first state to pull protected class away. I think we should want as many protections from everyone, particularly in these areas. No one should be discriminated against regardless of disability, color, creed, gender identity, on housing, healthcare, and credit.
Who's not a protected class? You know, I graduated in 1974 when they started affirmative action, which I was, and everybody else was more than glad to participate in. And 50 years later, I'm not sure where we got with all of that, but that was the most unconstitutional law that was ever passed.
What?
Because right now, the only people that don't qualify as a protected class are white males.
Oh, us poor whitey! Fuck!
Hey, why does this country owe you anything?
And I'm
Why
glad
do they owe you anything?
we're having a civil discussion.
Hey,
Oh,
we're gonna please calm down. We're gonna move on to some other questions. We've got other topics to cover. We've addressed this.
Actually, this kind of is a nice springboard.
You know what,
because I have
Pat? If
printed
you wanted
right
to, if you
here
wanted to
that
speak here, why didn't you
PSGAT,
talk to
because
these
of his
guys
fight
and you
against
could be one of these
DEI,
people? We're not having
is
a
actually
two-way
censoring the
conversation
Enola
between you
Gay.
and them.
In fact, per leaked details and documents, Pete Hesketh is not only censoring the Enola Gay bomber, he's also censoring the Tuskegee Airmen as well. That's kind of
Let's remove the guy.
I printed them all off for you.
I will ask you to leave.
You're the representative.
We're here to hear from our representatives,
Not you.
and we have other topics in respect of the other audience members. We're going to move on to another topic. I appreciate the passion on this, but we do have other questions that audience members submitted. So, Carrie, go ahead and move on.
Next question, guys.